standing, sitting in front of a camera, and then everyone who's shown up over the past few weeks and showed some love. The people in chat, I saw Adrian Doko already subscribed for his second month and drop some bits. So I appreciate you being in here. But just the consistency and having someone to provide this content to know people are listening, it makes it all worthwhile. Yeah, but I think I kind of explained last week that my sanity was like, I was on the fringe for sure, and I needed this. I needed an outlet to talk about the drone industry, to have conversations that aren't just solely confined to the manufacturer I work for and the business that I'm going after, but kind of get a broader sense of what's going on. To Shop Fox, holy shit, 10 gifted from Shop Fox. I don't know how or why we deserve that, but I appreciate you, brother. And I've said this before, everything that comes through this stream is all intended to go back and do something good. I have a few ideas, but it's all about, supporting the community, getting a spotlight on other people, and letting people know that the drone industry is alive and well. We're in a healthy place. And, I think that it only got more confusing yesterday. I don't think it's a surprise that DJI made an announcement and launched the M30. And, I look at that thing and I've said for a long time that the Phantom was kind of a missing or kind of a neglected airframe since the Mavic. And I think that kind of somewhat larger format airframe is really important for the industry. And DJI seemed to check a lot of boxes with that thing. But that doesn't mean that they're the only player in the game, and that is what we try to highlight, is everything else around the industry. So there'll probably be some talk about what that airframe means, what its shortfalls are, and how the rest of the industry is responding to that. So those are things that we could definitely get into in conversations tonight. But if there's stuff that you guys want to talk to when we bring on Peter, Sean, and Jeff, if there are things that you want to ask them specifically, or you just want to have an open conversation about something that you're seeing in the drone industry, this is the format for that. And I see that my boy Tomcat also just subscribed. And Tomcat, that's a special thing to me, my man. I've been kind of around the Twitch platform for a couple years as a viewer, and also supporting my sister, who I've mentioned before is a Twitch streamer. But Tomcat is a guy that I respect a ton. He also works with a streamer, a pretty large streamer on Twitch, on the video gaming side. And I was talking to Tomcat a couple months ago while I was at Autel about potentially kind of trying to blend this gamer and drone world together. And Tomcat and I have kind of connected, and he's in here giving us some love. So it's cool to see you in here, Tomcat, as well. So yeah, in a few minutes we'll bring on Jeff, bring on Peter, like I said. But if you guys do have questions, let's get into it. I've had really interesting conversations over the last week with a number of different manufacturers and players in the drone space, and I think I've mentioned before that I started this because I think that those conversations, if exposed to the industry, gives a lot of insights of how people are thinking about the industry, how people are thinking about drones, what are the difficulties and the challenges of using this technology or making this technology in the way that users expect it. And so if we are able to let our audience know, let the people that we're building this technology know what those challenges are, it could be a way to bridge that gap and make it so that it's a little bit easier for the users of drone technology to kind of anchor their expectations, and also to an avenue to provide feedback, because we're always listening. I think that every manufacturer, every software developer wants more input from their users, and so the more avenues that we have to get that, the better. Ascend Engineering, what's up? Good to see you in here. Shot Fox again, thanks for those gifted subs, my man. I really appreciate that. And yeah, so I think we're in a good spot. I'm going to switch over and bring in Peter, but if you guys have questions, I'll be checking that. I have some stuff that I kind of wanted to get into, but don't hesitate to throw in your questions, and I'll kind of be paying attention to that. So without further ado, we got Peter Fuchs from Ascent Engineering. What's up, my man?
How you doing, Randall?
I'm doing great. It's been a while since we've been face-to-face, but it's good to see you again.
Likewise, yeah. I think it's been at least pre-COVID anyway, so A lot of clicks on that clock.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's nice. I do this night format because I didn't want to mix it within my day job. I think I'm going to start changing that and doing things during the day. But it's nice doing it at night because you get to see people in their element where they do their things. And it looks like you got some guitars behind you. So that must be a thing, a passion of yours. And I think it's important to see like the humanistic, the real side of people in the drone industry. Oops, hold on. I got my wrong screen up. Okay, hold on one sec. I gotta. Damn it! How did that happen? Hold on. I gotta move you over to my other monitor. Come on. It's every week I'm gonna have something, and this week it's having things on the wrong screen. There we go.
We are carving new ground.
There we go. I think we're good. I think. Oh
We
my
get it.
gosh! Hold on, my man. Okay, I think we have it. All right. Why
All
is
right,
it so
you good?
small? Yeah, we're good. It's just things changed on my thing, so I have to fix it. Okay, guys,
All
sorry.
right.
Sorry about that. They could not see what I was talking about, but now they can. They could see that you have hobbies. So are you a big guitar player, or is that just kind of like a new hobby, a COVID hobby?
Actually, I've been doing this for years and years. I was in a band in high school. Actually, a couple bands in high school. A U2 slash Van Halen cover band.
Hmm.
That was a long time ago. And yeah, I dabble now. It's something you never really give up.
Yeah,
So
cool.
yeah.
Very nice. So I mean, as far as like your journey in the drone industry, I kind of did some research and those air quotes research, just kind of seeing how far it goes back because I didn't really realize how far your aerospace involvement has gone. So how did you really get into aerospace, and then how did that evolve into being a CEO of a drone manufacturer?
Yeah, so yeah, the short story is I was one of those kids. All I ever wanted to do is fly airplanes, and so I did that as my first career. Ended up flying private jets, Challengers, and Gulfstreams around the world. It was really my dream job. It was a great job, and I was always an RC modeler, RC airplanes and helicopters. Actually, my first RC set was a Craft, if anybody remembers that far back. I learned to fly helicopters on a Cricket. I was about 10. This is in like 1980, 1981, somewhere in there. Um, and yeah, so after flying, I went to business school. I went through sort of a series of jobs in kind of typical corporate America, some aerospace roles too. All the while, always an RC guy. And when was it? Fall of 2014, I was on DIY drones. This is when DJI and 3D
Right.
Robotics were kind of big names in town. And I ran across a couple of guys that had posted a video of this coaxial drone that they'd been sort of engineering. And I'm not an engineer, but I've been kind of nerding around with something like that in my shop. And so I reached out to him and I said, "Hey guys, this is really interesting. We should chat." And 4 months later, we were on Kickstarter, and that was kind of how we got started.
So the coaxial, like, well, at the time, were you thinking industrial when you did the Kickstarter? Because I mean,
No,
there's not
not
a
at
lot of
all.
people that will understand that on Kickstarter. They were looking for like the Lily drone, not necessarily something to carry like a thermal payload or whatever. So what was kind of the first step into that?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So 2014, 2015 was when 3D Robotics had the Solo sort of on the horizon. It wasn't out yet. The Phantom had just kind of come out. Kickstarter was full of campaigns like the Vantage Snap. There was the Xano and a bunch that had just gone nowhere. And we actually launched the spring of 2015 to the consumer market. We had a GoPro on there. Everything was all GoPro, right? And Lilly actually launched their own crowdfunding thing literally the week before we did.
Wow.
So we were initially focused towards the consumer market, but then, 2016, 2017, it became pretty clear that wasn't going to happen. That's a really hard strategy. So we put our heads down. We shipped all the Kickstarter commitments, and we were really proud to do that. And but then when the consumer market got pretty much locked up, we decided we were going to shift over to the industrial and the defense space. Most of the inquiries we were getting inbound, we weren't doing any marketing, we didn't have any money, were coming from the defense space, and they just saw there was just a lot of opportunity with this kind of form factor. So we went where the money was, and we had sort of a continual stream of small contracts for a little while.
So for those that don't know or have not been to your website, the coaxial drone is basically a large tube, and I'm guesstimating size, but it's maybe a little taller. A tube with no. Give me a size. Give me you're the guy.
Yeah, sure, sure. So the Sprite was our Kickstarter product. That was
Okay.
about the size of yeah, that was about the size of a can of tennis balls. I mean, a little bigger than that, but about that big. What you see on our website is our third generation product. It's actually called the Spirit, and it stacks as you can see on the website. The actual core of it is 4.25 inches in diameter and about 11 inches tall.
Okay.
And the core is really where the business happens. That's where the flight controller is, the motors, the speed control, the rotor system, and things like that. So it's only about the size of a large coffee can, only a lot narrower. And yeah, everything can sort of stack on top of that, on top and on the bottom.
And so, what kind of things do you stack? It's payloads intended to be a part of that stack only, or is there like onboard computing and things like that?
So we focus the business entirely on the airframe. We're the only real coaxial manufacturer in the world, and there's a lot of advantages for this form factor. And so we don't make our own payloads and flight computers and things like that. We use a Pixhawk cube, and we've designed the Spirit to be really modular, so everything sort of snaps together. The batteries are custom, of course, because they have to snap in. But then payloads are attached on these modules, which can include things like ViewPro cameras. We carry a night a the name's escaping me. The Israeli uh, camera company. It's escaping me.
There's a lot of them,
Anyway,
so yeah.
yeah, yeah. This is they have
Next
a
Vision.
company before me. Next Vision. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Next
I
Vision.
guess. However, your brain and my brain just talk to each other. I got it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long day. So Next Vision, they have a couple of really great cameras, and so we have a mounting system for that. They go on there, and everything just kind of clicks together. We've got two sets of customers though. One are the end users, right? People that actually have to fly and operate drones, public safety, mission critical operators, but then also system integrators, and they're the ones that have, for example, special solutions, special payloads, where they don't want to develop their own aircraft. So we've made the Spirit essentially perfect for that because we've got payload development kits that snap together, can talk to the autopilot, can talk from the top to the bottom, and you can really put anything on there. So we've got
So
customers that have done, you know, sniffers for gases and things like that. There's really anything that you want to do.
right. So here's a kind of a dumbass question. Well, no, I have two dumbass questions. I'll equally dumb in both categories. What about mapping with a coaxial drone? No different because I guess there's nothing obstructing the payload. You have full. You can look nadir or tilt it forward or whatever. So that I mean, do people use your airframe for mapping, or is there a challenge with how it flies that it maybe like knocks it off
No,
kilter?
you can use it for anything. You can use it for anything. It's so you can have a camera on the top or on the bottom, and if it's on the bottom, yeah, you've got a full 360, 180 degrees all the way around, and you can put one on the top too and go that way as well.
Yeah.
That kind of integration is really difficult. So as you know, it's early in this industry, and some of those things are still being figured out. But whether you're talking about mapping or surveillance or inspection, all these different workflows, right? The airframe is, I mean, we make the airframe. We're agnostic to the mission, and we're well suited for certain things. And if you're looking for something to go take pictures of your, house or the houses of your clients, if you got a real estate business, you're going to do really well with consumer product, right? But ours are also IP rated. They can fly in heavy rain and high winds, and so you can really fly when and where you need to. Which for a lot of these, especially system integrators, they're not looking for a compromise on the platform. They're looking for something that can really get the job done whenever.
Yeah, and you mentioned that a lot of your users, maybe up until now, or maybe you were saying early, were military. Is that correct?
So the defense, it's early in this tech cycle, right? And so the defense industry is where a lot of this is. And so we do have a lot of interest from the defense sector. A lot of that's really driven by the unique form factor, right? The cylindrical form factor is a geometrically really basic shape. So you can stack it and store it, launch it, recover it, reset it much more easily than sort of a traditional spidery sort of, quadcopter.
Yeah.
So a lot of the interest comes from number one, the form factor when they see it, but then the performance also when they fly it. because the combination of high speed and vertical takeoff and landing is really unique, especially within the size, and the form factor that it is.
So someone asked of what you're using as an RC or a ground control station, and kind of like, is there anything that makes this user experience flying the coaxial any different from flying a quad?
Yeah, anybody that's flown a regular quad is like this thing flies just like a regular quad. People have told us that it flies most like the Inspire.
Uh huh.
For those who are familiar with that platform, our GC we don't make our own GCS. We're actually GCS agnostic. We've flown with the HeroLink. We fly with some of the Blue systems. So we can do both like a micro hard, or we can put in other types of onboard systems, and so all of that is evolving, and we haven't invested heavily in that piece because quite frankly everybody else is, and we want to be agnostic to the use cases. We're focused entirely on the airframe because it's just so different,
Right.
and solves so many problems in its performance.
So you mentioned also earlier kind of like the unique pros that come from using coaxial, and you mentioned weather resistance, and there is something to be said about how you have that IP rating based off of the shape. Is that right? Because I think this is from earlier conversations that we had, that I remember you saying something about the way that it pushes air is different than maybe how it is on a quad.
Well, it's a cylinder, so cylinders are really simple shapes, and so all the joints and seams are basically, they're just a circle. You can seal those with an O-ring if you need anything at all. And there's nothing to sort of, fold like an arm where you're introducing joints and cracks and things like that, which add weight and complexity, right? So that's the form factor with respect to sealing it for IP. When it comes to the aerodynamics, basically the entire rotor disc provides thrust as opposed to the centerpiece where there's not a lot of thrust, right? That's where the vehicle sits. It sits outside of the airflow. And because of the properties of geometry, we have a lot more lifting surface within the same span of a similarly sized quad. So if you took a tip to tip of a Spirit and you laid it 24 inch or 25 inches, right, you're going to fit a lot smaller quad in that same space.
Yeah.
We're going to have as much as 3 times of the lifting surface.
Okay. I forgot to ask my second dumb question, and I think the more I've thought about it, the less dumb I feel. But you have basically two sets of props. I don't know what you call the stack,
Yeah,
but it
just yeah, two rotors.
to move it, because in quads the ESCs spin the propellers at a certain speed so that it knows to tilt
Mhm.
and to move. How are you doing that with just two that are vertically stacked on top of each other? Just give me like the basic physics of that, just because it doesn't make sense. If I push forward on a stick, what is happening? Is the top spinning faster? Is the bottom spinning faster?
So there's pitch, roll, and yaw, right? So
Right.
this is a coaxial system, and coaxials have been around for decades on full-scale helicopters, right? The Russians invented them back in the 50s. Sikorsky has an entirely new system that they're setting up with their X2 technology. They've been working on that for about the last 10 years, and it's really advanced stuff. We've invented in like a completely new kind of coaxial, and it's essentially working with a swash plate just like a helicopter, right? A swash plate tilts the rotor, and that's how we can get pitch and roll. So we can go anywhere in that whole rotor disc. Yaw is as you said controlled by changing the torque on the top or the bottom, and that creates a small amount of yaw differential, and that's what actually turns the vehicle within the yaw axis. It's really quite simple.
I mean, you say that, but I say that it sounds complicated.
Simple from a physics perspective, but when you think about the reliability of a system like this, some people say, well, look, you look at a quadcopter and it's got 4 motors and 4 ESCs, and there's no moving parts except for the props, and that's it.
Yeah.
True, but what usually fails on a quad? It's
Uh,
usually the ESC, right?
sure. Yeah.
Right. So we've got 2 ESCs, 2 motors, and 2 servos. And the servos control the swash plate, right? And the swash plate is just like a helicopter. It's really a very simple mechanical system.
Yeah.
But the engineering is actually really difficult to get it to perform that how we do. Like the Spirit, we've clocked it over 75 miles an hour. We can stop
It's
in a
crazy.
really short amount of space. We can do 70 degree bank turns. and we can swish in and out like a fixed wing airplane. And when you see that, the folks that see that, they don't believe what they're saying or seeing because it looks like something that's kind of hanging. And how is it stable? You just got to see it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the tricky thing about the drone industry is a lot of the stuff you see is not necessarily always the stuff that's like I mean, you mentioned you're the only one really making a coaxial of its kind, at least, in the unmanned space that's doing anything in numbers. And my brain always goes to this like kind of pessimistic or sort of if you're doing it and it's great, why is DJI not doing it? DJI does everything that everyone does great, right? Like that's their thing. I mean, they haven't
Yeah.
made a fixed wing yet, but you have this unique design and you're sold on it, and clearly there's a lot of advantages that are there. What would you say are the reasons that others aren't adopting this type of platform?
Sure, two reasons really. Okay, the first reason is we're in the early stages of this industry, and so much of what's happening out there is creating a capability where none existed before, right? This is like the biplanes in the 1910s and the 1920s when nobody was flying, right? Coming up with a biplane was like a miracle. And then all of a sudden, there were hundreds of manufacturers of aircraft, and biplanes did a pretty good job. They created a capability where none existed before. And now, for the most part, people know how to do quadcopters. It's really simple to do at this point. All the parts and all the sort of secret sauce is commoditized. It's just not hard. The challenge, just like a biplane, is once you hit a certain level of performance, that's as far as you're going to be able to go. Now, whether it's speed or endurance or range or payload or just operating in really austere environments, for this industry to really graduate onto what folks like to call enterprise operations at scale, you need to be able to fly in all conditions, 99.9% dispatch reliability. The way that happened in the airline industry is they invented the jet airplane and eventually really the 737 and the Airbus A320, because those are the airplanes that really made it efficient and possible to operate a network at scale.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing is really going to be or is required in our industry. We're not there yet, and it's going to take a while because there's all kinds of other network things that have to happen, regulations and all the other systems that have to come into place for airlines too. Um, but the first one is right now, it's really easy to make a quad, and so people do that. The second reason, otherwise, folks haven't, is it's really hard. It took us, I mean, we've been doing this now for almost 8 years, and it's really hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hard can be an understatement because what I've seen with what you call easy is really hard for tons of engineers everywhere. So I can only imagine what you're saying being hard and not having really like a blueprint or a DJI to look at, right? When you were able to get a Phantom, it was easy to make an Autel X-Star because there was something
Sure.
to go off of. So being a pioneer and kind of blazing your own trails with the coaxial unmanned platform, it's a big deal. And I think that, I represent a tricopter manufacturer. Who makes a tricopter? They're sold on the design. They're sold on like everything that it can do. There's not really a downside, but then you have skeptics. You have to answer questions like redundancy. So I'll ask that question to you. What about redundancy with a coaxial? Because you maybe do have an advantage since the propellers are stacked, but I don't know if that's the case or if there is Mayday stuff happening when you lose one ESC.
Sure. So a couple things. One is, yeah, there's always improvements. We haven't figured out every nut, or we haven't cracked every nut. Um, right now, we don't have an auto rotation capability on the products that we have out right now, which is basically like a helicopter. When you lose the power on a helicopter, you can auto rotate. We don't do that. We don't have a lot of reliability issues, but as we look at the regulatory environment, certification of operations and things like that, we're going to follow the same track as pretty much everybody else for now with a parachute and things like that.
Right.
And that'll solve it. But we actually want to build reliability into the system. So using much more reliable motors and ESCs and things like that, and designing out the failure modes. And that's where complexity or less complexity makes it easier. And we're actually mechanically quite simple.
Yeah, and I guess new doesn't always seem simple, and that's coming from me where I've been around, I've seen your stuff before, but when I really look at like laying out the flavors right? It's almost like staring at a menu at McDonald's. Like I go for the same thing every time because it's tried and true, right? And it's almost like McDonald's having something that doesn't even look like a burger, and you're like, do I even want to go there? And maybe McDonald's isn't for everyone, but I'm exposing that I have no qualms with eating garbage. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it's a great analogy. And if you think about it ultimately, Rand, right? If you look out in the full scale world and even in just kind of larger drones, right? The group twos, group threes, there's always going to be room for lots of different kinds of aircraft because different missions require different tools. And the coax is not going to be the best for everything. Fortunately, we know how to make them really small and really big. And there'll be more information, more news coming out this spring about what we're coming out with next. But it's going to be pretty exciting for the industry because it's going to unlock capabilities that are just not possible today, and not possible without a coax. And we're really excited about our role. We keep our heads down. We're not a lot of, we don't do a lot of marketing. We don't do a lot of, we don't create a lot of noise. But we try to let our products actually speak for themselves. And I think people are going to be really excited about are, what they finally are now hearing about this really great secret that nobody's heard about.
yeah, and I think that that's like a very significant question that I have is for someone that you have a great product, and that's not a question mark for me. Like I've seen your stuff for a long time, and I know that it's good. I know that more people would benefit from seeing it. And like you said, you don't make a lot of noise, but you kind of have to. So as CEO of a drone manufacturer, it's always a mistake to look at DJI as the benchmark because 13,000 engineers and 2 billion in revenue, like that's going to take a minute to get to. So then you can look at the rest of the pool and you can try to win what you could win. And, a lot of manufacturers in the US have looked at NDAA compliance and, made in the US and we're not Chinese and basically like that's the way to win. I don't necessarily think that's a long-term strategy, but it's part of it.
Hmm.
But it really is about being exposed to the buyers. And so how do you become less of a secret? And
Yeah, no,
what is the goal? I mean, is it being number 2, number 3? Do you not care where you fit just as long as the right users are using your stuff? Like it's a tough thing for me to understand. So I'll pitch it to you.
sure. So look, I mean, big picture. So I'm a recovering finance guy. And so, throughout my role here at Ascent, we've been really hyper focused and really focused on delivering value for what resources we had. For the first almost 7.5 years of the company, we were entirely funded, with one small exception, the Genius New York program. We were entirely funded by our own operations, no outside venture money at all. And in the hardware space, getting really any kind of business off the ground in hardware is really hard. Doing it with an aircraft is even harder, and doing it with no outside money is almost unheard of. So we've been quiet for a reason. We haven't been spending resources on that. We
Yeah.
just are closing our first like outside capital round for the first time. So you're going to be hearing more and more of, from us and about us as we do begin to invest more in that awareness piece.
Yeah, I think that that's great. And I mean, I'm I'm sometimes critical of those that get a lot of money, a lot of venture money, whether they're Bay Area outfits or otherwise. We've seen the Airwares take a lot of money and go away. We've seen Precision Hawk take a lot of money and kind of disappear. They haven't gone away. Maybe I'm trying to not put them in the same plane. Airware disappeared. Precision Hawk just kind of went quiet, and maybe they'll come out with something. Yeah, but
Yeah,
Precision Hawk was throwing all the parties and doing every keynote, and Michael Chasen was like on the head of the DAC. And money can buy you a lot of things, but then you run out of money. That's the tricky bit. So I really am impressed at how much you were able to self fund. But I also have talked a lot about this secret sauce that I believe in, which is free marketing like this. I mean, this isn't like a big crowd. You and I have known each other, obviously, Bobby, and there's a connection there. But you can get in front of people and say, here's my stuff, and I'm willing to answer any question and be a part of any platform to try to do that. So I guess like you personally are not the most active person in the community as far as like getting in front of a ton of people. Why is that? Like, why not take the steps to go to Adrian Doko's thing in Texas where he brings a bunch of drone people and just get them excited, and then word of mouth spreads to everyone else?
Well, that one, I don't know. I wasn't invited, but I'd be happy to go
Right.
because he probably didn't hear about us, right? No, look, I'd be happy to go. Maybe it's my German upbringing, but look, we've been heads down, and you know as well as everybody, right? Our industry's really struggled from a lot of overpromise and underdeliver,
Yeah.
and that's just something that we've been really, really reluctant to do. So we don't have a whole lot of customers that come to us and say, "Boy, I'm disappointed." We really have wanted to be ready
Yeah.
for every step that we take. And that's why when you hear more about us this year, you can have more confidence that what we're actually saying we are doing. And what we say we will do based on what we have done. And anybody coming into the Boston area, we would welcome you to come by. We're about half an hour north of Boston, and we'd love to show you what we got. And you got to see this stuff to believe it. You really do.
Yeah, and I think exactly what you said, where the word confidence is really loose within the drone industry, right? Because you can, especially in the industrial space. Let's talk about that as a segment on its own, or and
Hmm.
including public safety. If you buy a
Sure.
DJI product, you're probably going to be happy with the user interface. It's probably going to be decent quality, and you're going to be supported by the hundreds of resellers that are across the country that will be happy to sell you props or fix your thing if it goes down. But
Hmm.
the confidence that you have that you could be flying that for the next 5 years, not only will they maybe not support it anymore, but also they might be shut out of the US for any number of reasons, takes away
Hmm.
that confidence. Then you take like the next layer of drone manufacturers, Autel, also Chinese. Skydio took a lot of money, and maybe their goal isn't even to sell to the commercial space long term. Maybe their eyes are at the governmental space, and that seems to be what they're signaling to me. Then there's the
Hmm.
next set, which is how much money, how much runway do they have until they can no longer, they can't scale, so they might not be able to deliver, or they might not exist in a handful of years, possibly. So I think that what you're saying is really crucial to understand leadership within the drone industry, where it's doing what you say you're going to do, not overshooting your shot, taking your shot, like timing it at the right time, so that you're not going to be stuck with a lot of disappointed people that are going to attach it to your brand forever in a small tight knit community.
Yeah, look, that's all correct. I mean, the bottom line is that, China's made a great product. DJI has made a great product. Autel makes a really good product too. The announcement yesterday, the M30, I mean, wow, that's a really, really great solution. And I think we all aspire to that kind of level of, performance. We would never say that like we can do all of that they can because, like you said, they've got tens of thousands or thousands and thousands of people, and they've got lots and lots of resources. But we also, think it's really early. And the story has not been written. A lot of users are still trying to figure out what it is they exactly want to do and what problems they're trying to solve. And a lot of the problems we think can be solved through an airborne platform haven't even really been conceived of yet. I've been around, I'm almost 52. And so as I look out, I think back to like the early 1980s and the computer age when I was 10, 12 years old, which is right, the computer age was just getting started. People had TRS 80s and they had, Tandy 1000 and these, home computers that nobody could figure out what to do with. We talked about like you keep your recipes and your phone books on it. You couldn't even begin to conceive of what a phone today could do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yet all those other things had to happen. I really believe, and I think a lot of folks like you and others, right? We all believe that there is as big a future for unmanned technology as there is for that kind of technology over the long term. What we're trying to do today is create something where nothing has existed, and that's really hard. And I give so much credit to everybody, not only who's succeeding, but who's tried and isn't succeeding at this, because it's so, so hard. And we learn from every failure that everybody makes. We really do think there's plenty of room for lots of different success stories in this space. And DJI is really big. They do a good job. Maybe they'll be around for the next 40 years. I don't know. We will be because we're going to take things one step at a time and we're going to bite off only as much as we can chew. What we think is that we're going to be able to take much bigger bites as we grow.
Yeah, definitely. So For people that do want to follow kind of your journey and the ascent journey, do you want to kind of give us like, is LinkedIn a good place if people were interested in talking to you directly? Would that be the spot to do so?
Yeah, definitely. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day. If you want to, link up, drop me a quick note that says, "Hey, I heard you on the podcast." Just a quick, reason why we should sort of connect. I get like, a bunch of invites of, folks who are
Right.
really interesting, but that connection is really helpful, right? We do most of our marketing there for now, so you can follow our stories there. We are just forming a marketing team right now. We have one marketing person. She's great. We'll be adding to our content over the course of the next few months and quarters and years. So yeah, follow us. Our website will probably be the post or the place where we post a lot of stuff. But come see us at AUVSI, of course. We will be there, and we'll have some great, interesting new products to talk about there as well.
And the last thing I'll ask is about your other new edition, which I don't know if I am like saying something too soon, but I think you got like one of my favorite guys in the drone industry very recently joining your team. Is that like okay for me to talk about?
We're going to announce that on
I
April
won't
1.
say anything then. Guys, Peter is a man of his word. He is one of a great leader for his company and a great leader for the drone industry. And as we're trying to go out and educate more people on what the technology can do and find people that really can see beyond the 3 year, 5 year walls. Peter's a great guy to do that. So I encourage everybody here that isn't connected to Peter to get connected and stay tuned to the announcement he's going to make on one of my favorite guys joining his team, as well as seeing them at AUVSI in Orlando. Peter, I am forever grateful. I'm sorry that I've been looking in this direction. I thought you'd be on a different monitor, but I appreciate you dealing, and hopefully we can have you on again and talk about more of the technology.
We'd love to do it. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it,
Yeah,
and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks
sounds
very
good.
much.
See you, Peter.
So long.
Guys, that was Peter Fuchs of Ascent Technologies. Fantastic guy. And while we're waiting for Sean, I'm just gonna fix my monitor situation because it will make me feel so much better if it is on the other screen. But I saw a ton of shit happen. Adrian Doko, really, really appreciate you dropping those bits. And I saw that there was a few other things. John Cuppy subscribed with his Prime. If you guys do have Prime and you're not subscribed, you might as well link your Prime account to your Twitch, and then you'll be able to subscribe for free. Basically, it will be Jeff Bezos dropping some love into the Unmanned Underground platform. So if you are an Amazon Prime member, link it to your Twitch. Yeah, sorry. Ascent Aero Systems. What did I say? I don't even know what I said. My bad. Did I say Ascend? Ascend Tech. Oh, I was talking about the guys that the Intel bought. Ascending Technologies is what I said, huh? My bad. I got a lot in my brain, but yeah. And then I have Ascend Engineer, who I don't know if you're from. No, what in the world? I'm mixing Ascent and Ascend all day long. So yeah, there is there is a lot of you. But yeah, I appreciate Peter being on here and Bobby correcting me for all the issues that I have. I'm gonna switch over my screen just so that that's done. I don't know how to do it while I'm talking to you guys though. Maybe we're not. Maybe we're just gonna have everyone on this screen. But anyways, I appreciate you guys talking in chat while we go through that. I see Chris Finks up in here. What's up, my brother? Yeah, let's get weird for sure. One of these episodes, other than the first one, which went really, really, Ken's audio was off of the first. Every episode has had some sort of hiccup, but we're working through it, and hopefully you guys are finding the information that's coming out of people to be super helpful or at least educational as we move through kind of different experiences and different backgrounds within the drone industry. I think that it's really interesting to hear perspectives of companies like Peter's, where it's not necessarily they're the ones competing for this blue SUAS stuff and trying to make the next Skydio or the next Mavic or whatever. They're in a completely different class, but it's used for the same thing. And I think that there should be a huge magnifying glass or a huge spotlight put on technologies that are being made throughout the drone industry, even if it's ones that aren't spending a lot on marketing or are not going to have the loudest voice. So I appreciate Peter being in here to give us that, and also you guys being in here to chat. So next we're going to have Sean in just a few minutes. And Sean and I were connected like back when I was at Autel. I was supposed to go on his show, which he has a weekly podcast on Friday afternoons, U.S. time, so Friday evenings in the U.K. And I was supposed to go on his show while I was the CEO of Autel, and then like basically 2 days before, I was like, "Sorry, man, I can't be on your show." It would have been quite awkward. So we made that happen like last week, and it was a great chat. I felt like it was really, really open and honest, and I was like, yo, it'd be awesome to have this come to this side of the world and have the conversation with this network, so that we could just expose what he's doing to more people. So I do encourage everyone here to join his show on Friday afternoons. I think it's largely a similar concept where he brings on guests, and he has a lot of really interesting tight connections within the United Kingdom, and it's also interesting to see what we can learn from each other. Tomcat, you asked if it's available on podcast format. I've never really thought to do that. We do have the recordings that we post on the Unmanned Underground website, and then we also have the recordings put onto YouTube, I believe. Grisbang would be the guy that knows more about how we host those things, but if there's a way to put on podcasts, I think over time it would make sense. We're still kind of just getting our footing, and for everyone that is here, the concept of Unmanned Underground is not this to be my platform, but is meant to be a platform for everyone who has something to say. So over the next handful of weeks, hopefully, we'll be bringing on other hosts that will take on other time slots. So it could be Wednesday in the middle of the day, a weekend show, could be something that, Sean is doing something from the UK in our afternoon, but it's his evening, so that we have a more constant flow of content here, using this platform and building a larger community, so that we can get exposed to other people's insights and networks, not just my own. So that's the idea long term. It's taken us a bit to get all of those things set up. It's much more complicated than you think, sharing a Twitch account with a bunch of other people, but we're working on getting that all set up over the next handful of weeks, like I said. So like I said, Sean Hickey is our next guest. He has his weekly show, Geeks Vana, which is a UK broadcast, and I figure, why the hell not? We'll bring him in and start the conversation now, if everyone is cool with that. Sean, what is up, my man? How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Can you speak one more time, because it's not very loud on my end.
1 2 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, it's probably all right. And if we need to figure out audio, I can try to bump something up on my end. But yeah. So how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me along. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. It's been a whole week and a few days since we last spoke.
Indeed, yes, it's been a whole week.
Yeah. So if you could kind of give a rundown, because last time I did a lot of introduction on my end to tell your folks who I am and what I'm about, but now you get to do the same. Like, how did you get to be doing the Geeks Vana thing? How long has that been happening? And then what other things are you doing that link you to the drone space?
Okay. Basically, Geeks Vana has been going for about 2.5 years now. I came at this thing from the drone side of things as a hobbyist, as somebody that purchased a drone from a local retailer, just a little Parrot drone. In fact, it's the one hanging on my wall, the original Parrot Bebop drone, and had some fun with it, and then sort of started searching videos and got into the drone hobbyist community, followed quite a few of the large drone channels. And it really came out from there, really, from the point of view that I really liked the type of thing that those channels were producing, the type of content. I felt like I could put my own voice to some of that as well. And so we're still very, very young in sort of broadcast terms, and we're still evolving our message. We're still evolving really what we're here to do, and I'm trying to allow that to be dictated by the industry and be dictated by the audience as far as which types of direction that we actually go in. It's been a fun ride so far. We've really and we will cover everything from We have short, sort of 3.5 minute news stories, all the way through to a couple of hour podcasts on the channel. We upload. We don't actually have a regular schedule at the moment, but we upload probably 2 or 3 times a week at least. But again, because a lot of the content that we cover is actually news driven, it does depend on how much news is out there that's
Right.
actually worthwhile. I don't like just making content for the sake of it, as it were. But yeah, and we've then moved on to from the hobby side of things, that we also deal with the commercial side as well. We've got collaborations going with the NPCC, which is the National Police Chiefs Council here in the UK, as far as being able to get the truth about drone enforcement, as far as law enforcement is concerned, and how they will interact with hobby drone flyers, etc. There was a lot of mythology surrounding that, so we've got a series of programs that we're putting together with them. The first one's already gone live. And we now speak to the Civil Aviation Authority, the UK air regulator, etc. Again, to try and get to the heart of it. And we will cover every story from crowdfunding campaigns that are drone specific, that have turned into scams effectively, that have taken people's money for absolutely nothing, through to raising up people like Brink, and we have Brink on, who actually did a full live demo of their Lima drone on the channel, which was an exciting challenge to have. Obviously, a UK show with the guys over in California demonstrating the drone live, which is always a technical challenge, but that was actually a really enjoyable show. All the way through to really deeper dives as far as even the political side of things. We do dive into the US politics and look at what's happening with what I call the sort of US versus DJI situation.
Right.
So there isn't really a story that we're too afraid to touch. We're completely independent, so we're not sponsored by any of the drone manufacturers, etc. We don't have NDAs or agreements with any of them to say you can't talk about us in certain ways. And yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell what Geeks Finder is. Although, as I say, we are still finding that voice.
Yeah.
And I think the next 2022 is going to be important. I think as we come out of 2022, that's really when the channel is going to probably find its feet.
So I had 2 questions that came to mind, and I think one is probably going to be a longer answer, so I'm going to save that one for just to get the easy one out of the way, which is, you came in to the industry as a hobbyist or a consumer of drone technology, and you've moved your interest into the industrial space. Maybe I don't know if you're operating commercially and you can say that, but your audience as well, being maybe a mix, but probably started more so as hobbyists. Would you say that there is that is a gateway drug to people moving into the industrial space? Or do you find that people, like in an industry, finds the necessity to have drone operators and they go find them, or they're born internally saying, hey, you are the guy that's going to start flying drones commercially, and that's how they get started?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, actually, and I think the drone regulation changes that we've had here in Europe and the UK, we've changed things around from the point of view that you no longer need what was our Part 107 to fly commercially. You can now actually have a hobbyist that's going to fly commercially, as long as they're correctly insured. So the barrier as far as commercial qualifications was taken down, and that was about that was at the end of 2020 that happened. So we're now kind of in a new age where the border as far as the lower end commercial operator is very much blurred. So we have a lot of hobbyists that will actually even use their Mini 2 to do things like the odd roof inspection and take photos for someone, that type of thing, which obviously is very much the lower end of that side. But then they do get the bug, and then they start to get more qualified and start to take on the larger equipment, etc., and that type of thing. I mean, I myself, I've gone from the hobby side of things to now being A2CFC and GVC qualified, which is, I suppose, a mix of a Part 107-ish type of qualification. Although we have a flight test with ours, so they actually make sure that we can fly the drone. I still find that bizarre that Part 107 is literally, it's a written exam only, but that's fine. So it's interesting. Our audience is split 50-50 almost exactly between the UK and the US. So we also get a very unusual dynamic from the point of view that I will put a story out. We had a story a couple of weeks ago regarding one of the states that was looking in the US that was looking to actually try and ban drone flight over private property. And so we had a great discussion on the channel in terms of comparing the US law to UK and EU law and that type of thing. And I found it's been quite effective because it's bringing the audiences together, if that makes sense. It's actually bringing, we're having conversations across the pond, and we're actually finding out that of course so much of our legislation is very similar, but actually so much of the struggles in terms of the hobbyist through to commercial side of things are also very, very, very similar.
So that leads me to the second question, which is, how annoying is it to constantly talk about the drone industry in terms of what the US is doing? Or is it really not the case? I mean, like, Part 107 is nothing groundbreaking, and obviously others have gotten better certification for pilots. Like you mentioned, having a practical test seems to be practical, sensible in every sense of the word. But, you do have to kind of look at the US market to understand where the industry might be going, because manufacturers are catering so heavily to the US market. But there's also plenty of European drone manufacturers. I don't know of many in the UK, but European drone manufacturers that are fine being super successful in Europe and not necessarily worried about other markets. So, I mean, how do you see the UK as being a leader in the drone space, but also being, how do you feel the news travels across the Atlantic or across the continent to where, you guys are trying to predict where others are going to take the industry, and how does that work?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because under our previous regulations and when the UK was part of the EU, etc., of course we were part of EASA, so there was the I think something like nearly 30 member states, etc. So we were part of a much larger organisation, so our voice was a little bit smaller, but we were going along with very much a huge body of evidence and findings and research as far as where the drone industry should go. Now we are a standalone state, so we control our airspace alone. Things have started to develop quite quickly in a lot of different directions. So urban air mobility is something which we are certainly starting to lead Europe on, and we've got our first urban airport opening in Coventry in April, which is actually going to have beyond visual line of sight drone flights from there, and also the trials for the air taxi type of scenario. Although we know that obviously those things happening regularly are a long way off. So it used to be that we would very much follow the US, and we would feel like if you guys caught a cold, we would sneeze type thing. But actually the paths have started to separate a little bit. And we're starting to find that the UK, in many aspects, have actually started to branch out and find our own path, whilst keeping an eye on what everybody else is doing. So, for instance, remote ID isn't the issue here that it is in the States at the moment. It will be at some point, but even then, it seems the conversations I've had seem like we're going to approach it in a fairly sensible way. We've got overflight of people for anything under 250 grams, that type of thing, and so there's a few unique factors with the UK that I'm excited about. I was very nervous about us coming out of the EU in terms of the industry side of things and actually being able to build and be successful. But perhaps that independence on this side of the pond has given us a little bit of more of a unique edge. So, for instance, during the height of the pandemic, our beyond visual line of sight flights were being approved left, right, and centre. We had all sorts of different projects happening, which we wouldn't have been able to do under the previous structure. So that's been fascinating to see the different direction we can go in. But yeah, I mean, I'm finding that it's obviously a story that's developing stateside is often something which will have a UK flavour to it, but not as much as it used to, from the point of view that it really wasn't almost like looking in our future. As I say, I feel like we're going in our own direction now, which is exciting.
Yeah, and I never really thought about the impact of Brexit on the unmanned space. And there's a lot of countries, and India's maybe the most pronounced, where they have this made in India effort. They're trying to bolster and foster innovation within India. They have a good IT and tech center. They have pretty inexpensive labor. They have good minds towards what can be done with drone technology, and they have a shit ton of problems that can be solved, if I'm being blunt. So India is incentivized and has incentivized their people to go and develop technologies. Maybe under the EU, where your flights, your airspace was regulated in with kind of a federalist system like we have in the U.S.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
That prevents, or I guess what can happen in the U.S. is state by state. There will be some states with a little more lenient laws, and that's going to push manufacturers of different types of things to those states. But the UK being in charge of its own destiny now, and like you said, urban air mobility is a thing that is being tested. I think Amazon was doing early tests of package delivery in the UK as well. Why is it that the UK doesn't have more manufacturing being done there of drone technologies? Or is it like Peter, the guy, our previous guest, who just they're not getting a lot of shine, or not getting a lot of recognition in the United States, especially?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it's probably a bit of a mixture, from the point of view that the UK in manufacturing terms isn't particularly strong these days. Most of our car brands are owned by foreign companies and that type of thing, and even the famous Range Rover is actually Indian owned now, etc., and that type of thing. So our production and some of our biggest production, even in automotive side of things, is actually foreign companies with factories here, that type of thing. So we tend to find that on the unmanned side as well. There's lots of really great small projects like Evolve Dynamics and people like that are doing extremely well, and there are a lot of smaller companies with very specialized units that are doing some exceptional work. But we don't really seem to have that push. Whereas, and somebody was asking in the chat regarding the whole blue UAS side of things.
Yeah.
And we don't have that focus. Instead, that focus seems to have skipped drones and gone into urban air mobility. It seems to be that UAM is where the UK wants to stake their claim, in my opinion, because of all most of the heavily funded sandboxes, etc., are all UAM focused rather than UAS focused, basically.
And because UAM to me is like, it's exciting if we could get there, and you said that we're a long ways off, but because the UK does focus so much on that, can you give kind of a breath into what the UAM like tug of war looks like in the UK? Maybe there's companies that are doing things on a big level, or where you've seen kind of the phasing of testing, or your crystal ball of how long it's going to take before we see kind of these people moving airframes.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting one, because we and actually the project that we've got, one of the most public projects we have at the moment, which is actually the physical building of an urban airport, and the air and port are two separate words, very carefully for all sorts of regulatory reasons, etc. So it's urban airport rather than airport. It's really a showcase item. It isn't actually going to necessarily be a working unmanned airport, but it's going to have things like the police are going to be doing some beyond visual line of sight testing from there and that type of thing. Hyundai are backing the project from their urban and unmanned team as well. And yeah, it's kind of, I would say we're right in the crux at the moment, where we've got some very good products happening, some very good aircraft starting to be developed. We've got the start of this could be the infrastructure, this could be XYZ. But we've still got to have our Tesla moments and our controversies and everything else like that in UAM, that there's just such a long way to go. And I think we're at that accelerated period again here in the UK, where we are trying to get ahead of the game, but there's obviously going to be some fairly heavy breaks at some point, whilst infrastructure in particular manages to catch up, because you can put the regulation in place, you can have the manufacturers there, but of course if you don't have the infrastructure to run these things effectively, the whole thing falls down.
So because you don't have a blue SUAS distinction for manufacturers, that I'm assuming that's the blue SUAS distinction that the U.S. is given still carries some weight, with air quotes. I've heard people in the UK and abroad talk about blue SUAS as if it matters to some degree to them. But is everyone just using DJI then? Like,
yeah. I mean, we do not have the political or really any kind of issue in terms of DJI as a enterprise product being used by government agencies here whatsoever. All of our drone police are very happy to be using their products. They're obviously excellent products, and they actually do what it says on the tin, etc. So the Matrice 300 is extremely popular here in the UK, and that's really the same for most enterprise users, as far as private businesses as well, and public safety, etc. So the M30, which has just been released, is literally, if you looked on LinkedIn for any of the UK drone units, it's wet dreams galore. Basically, they just can't wait to get their hands on these things,
right?
Because they are perfect for our, especially being IP55 as well. They are perfect for the rainy British weather. So we don't really have that issue. We kind of look across at the blue UAS thing, and to be honest with you, I think in the early days, a lot of people here in Europe and the UK kind of giggled and kind of sniggered at it and said, "Oh, it will never work. You're never going to catch DJI. You're never going to have effective platforms, and airframes happening, and it's always going to be some heavily subsidized thing that really doesn't get anywhere in the end." And now, of course, you've got some very serious products and some very serious companies doing some fantastic work in the US. I think it's something that we kind of look at with a little bit more envy as well, frankly.
Yeah, I think with the launch of the M30, and it's not even as a manufacturer or as someone that doesn't value what DJI brings to the table, because it's the complete opposite. I still was kind of like, oh shit. Now DJI has put out something that is so appealing and has the DJI might of the dollar or the RMB, however you want to look at it, where they can drive prices down to where the blue SUAS guys are going to have a hard time catching. They're going to have a feature set that's going to be unbeatable. And it's going to make this decision harder. So all the ground that has been made by these other manufacturers now was just set back. And DJI does this professionally, right? They know how to time their launches.
Indeed.
They know how to get... Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's been particularly effective because you start to hear sort of thought processes of a Matrice coming along. Okay, there's going to be a new Matrice in the next couple of months. You think, okay, well, how's that going to hit on the US side of things with all the sanctions, etc. So of course they bring out something which is perfect for first responders, who of course are pretty much the most senior level of law enforcement now in the US that have full financial control, so therefore can still buy those products, and it doesn't look like that's going to necessarily change. So it was literally the perfect product on the enterprise side of things to really come out and stamp their authority on the market again. Right. And even the drone in a box thing, which even Brendan Schulman, former DJI, has been commenting on Twitter that it's really the first product he's seen of DJI's that there isn't a market for as such from a regulation point of view as well. There's lots of regulation issues in deploying that right now.
Yeah.
But it's still such a heavy stamp to put on that side of things and just say, okay, guys, this is now the benchmark for that cost level, easily deployable, etc. Everything else like that. Even things like having, the way they've broken everything down so that part of the camera sensors, etc., are now all within the drone itself. So even the unit at the end is much lighter, etc. I just think it's there is innovation there, and I think they've done the DJI thing of coming out with a product that I look at it and I think I can't really fault it, which is and if you put that with the political noises being made, towards the end of last year, and all of the posturing and everything else, and the sort of anti-DJI feeling, etc. This, to me, as you're saying as well, with the price point, really does slap them firmly back into the center spot,
Right.
and say, actually, because again, and one of the things that I think people didn't look into too much, they are securing the networks to the EU, to the US, and that type of thing. So there is digital cybersecurity sort of happening there as well, for this drone. So it's just so impressive, and they've kind of done it in the way that only DJI can, really.
Right. So this is going to be kind of a mini length story to get to a question, but in 2018, I believe, DJI started reaching out to their partners to have them join what was called the Drone Advisory Network, which was called the DAN. And the DAN was supposed to be basically people that would sign their name along with the business that they represent to say DJI is A-OK by us. I was at FLIR at the time. We were a close DJI partner. And they're like, hey, would you be part of the DAN? Internally at FLIR was a big difficulty because we had a CEO that was former Army and had a lot of China skepticism. But they were going to Microsoft. They were going to, anyone that they could find to have them make this list that they could give to the U.S. government and say, look at all these people that like us. Basically, with the M30 launch, they did that themselves, which is going to be people saying, you cannot keep us from using a technology that is so far superior at a price point that we can stomach. You shouldn't do this. And I think, again, it comes to this oh shit moment. Like, what is it? What is open for other people? Unless you have a very specialized product that does GPS denied situations. You mentioned Brink drone. Like, a DJI drone does not do what a Brink drone does. Flyability drone is not going to be challenged by DJI drones because of what it does. Yep. Or there's going to be munition dropping or gun toting drones that are not going to be challenged by DJI. DJI doesn't want anything in that market. So unless you're making tanks, how do you make a car that people want? I mean, it's DJI is not only the Ford and the Mini and the Range Rover, right? They're also the fastest. They're the Ferrari and the Porsche, and they're also the most economical. They're the Civic and the Honda or the Toyota. Absolutely. So it's so hard to start conceptualizing an analogy to talk about the drone industry. So that was my question. In all of this, if you were to explain to someone how you could still win in the unmanned space, uncrewed for those that want me to change my vernacular, like, how can you tell that story to yourself where you're making something to compete against that?
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting question, because I think that, and I don't necessarily agree with the I keep talking about the political might, the political anti-DJI sort of feeling, and I'm not saying that from the point of view of agreeing with it or disagreeing with it, but I really felt that was starting to cause some significant damage. And then there would be pockets opening up, and potentially, even especially with cover lists and things, there would be very big pockets opening up for people to jump into. But with this drone, they really have closed a lot of doors. I mean, I think I know of, and I would never mention their names, obviously, but I think I personally know of 3 or 4 companies that I think can't survive now. The M30 and that box is out there for those kind of prices. Mm-hmm. I think it is going to cut a lot of companies off at the knees, several at least. And I mean, as far as how people can find a space now within things, I think it is going to have to be the specialized side of things. It's going to have to be, building those specialized marketplaces that can fit in and around and can do something else. And that's what people are going to have to find. They're going to have to find what is that other thing that they can do. But if you have a drone now like the M30, which is going to dominate first responder sales, absolutely dominate, you do wonder where people could actually find those holes, because of course, to develop something and to be able to release it at such a relatively affordable price, relatively cost-effective price, is beyond the means of most small manufacturers. So I don't think I know that answer, and I think, especially just like the conversation we had on my channel a couple of weeks ago. That dominance that DJI has from the point of view of being an issue within the industry, I think with the M30 almost becomes worse. I can't, but that's almost like I'm sort of down talking DJI for releasing a great product, but it just feels, unless of course when it gets out there, although the people that I know that have used it so far say it is absolutely spot on. And it has been developed in the hands of first responders, etc., with direct feedback and everything else like that, and literally the feature set is the checklist of what everybody in that marketplace has been asking for. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really difficult one, and I think it's going to be an innovation, or it's going to be a leap forward potentially. That's what we're going to have to see. So someone's going to have to leapfrog them in some kind of innovation side of things. Obviously we hoped people like maybe Skydio would do something, etc. But of course they're not really interested in drones long term, so I don't think it's necessarily going to be them. But yeah, I do wonder as well, once things like remote ID and other areas of regulation have settled down, I do wonder if we'll start to see other major cash being put into the unmanned, uncrewed sector.
Right.
But yeah, only time will tell.
So John and Fly Girl Charlie both mentioned interesting things, and I will formulate this into kind of my own thoughts first, is that the only way to look at the M30 or look at DJI and compete against them is to find their holes. And DJI is not without holes. They probably do launch a product that's too early, and then they have their first buyers be beta testers, and then, they put out a V2 and everyone's sad about it and wants a V2 and they complain about it, but they still buy the second version. They aren't ultimately that concerned with their customer. They're concerned with continuing to make money and grow their profits and grow revenue numbers so that they can IPO in China. I mean, that is ultimately seems to be the playbook and the goal of Frank Wong. So if there's DJI, which has flaws, and then there's everyone else, which if the only way you're going to market is against DJI, like what about their cybersecurity? What about the reliability of whatever? What you can't trust on what DJI says, and so that's how you sell against them. It's only going to cause desperation on all fronts to get more complicated.
Yes, because one of the cringiest points that I felt was actually when Parrot launched the Anafi USA, and they spent about 20-30 minutes of the start of their presentation telling us why DJI is so bad. And it's kind of like, actually, your audience, especially for something like the Anafi USA, they already know those things. You don't need to spend. You could just say very quickly, this happened, and because of that issue with DJI, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then just move on.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with you, and I really felt like that launch day was a bit of a disappointment. It was a bit of a bitter pill, because I was really excited about that drone. For many reasons, especially a European company doing Blue UAS, etc., that type of thing, actually transferring their IP across to a secure American company, that type of thing. It had so much chance, but again, I feel like, exactly as you're saying, they focused on the negative, and I think we don't need to focus on the negative, because I think actually, my personal opinion is I think DJI will undo themselves in the end. But I think you need to let them get on and do that. And actually, what we need to see is some innovation in the marketplace.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where the fight needs to happen in the ring, so to speak. And I feel like it's so much of like a political race where you're slandering your opponent and digging up old dirt. But I think that what we're gonna run into is being like, but DJI is not cyber secure, and they're gonna say, test it. Look, we'll pay $5 million, or pounds in your case, maybe 3 million pounds, to have some third party validate it, and it's going to be a reliable source, and they're going to say it's clean. DJI does not need to do dirty stuff. DJI probably has some links to the Chinese government in some way, probably, but it's probably not in the way that everyone is hoping is going to be their undoing, that we're going to find that, every week Frank goes and gives a bunch of data sets of nuclear power plants and oil refineries to the government. I don't think that's
The
happening.
board meeting is actually at a secret airbase or something. Yeah.
Exactly. So I doubt that there's going to be anything like that. And everything that we knock DJI for today, they are spending their time to fix. You want to complain about DJI drones flying over or around airports, or around stadiums? They put out Aeroscope and they say, look, you could shut them all down. Law enforcement, all you have to do is pay us, but you could shut them all down. We'll give you access to all this information that otherwise no one else is doing, right? So when Brendan Schulman left, I was like, they're going to be in trouble because they no longer have this like very well respected guy in this game, and Brendan is a mentor and to a degree a hero of mine. Like, I value the shit out of him, and that goes without saying. But DJI's been fine, and DJI probably will do things like get rid of geofencing, which was brought up, and they'll be fine, and they're just going to respond to what customers are asking for and what complaints people have to distrust them. And by the time that anyone in the blue UAS space or otherwise finds a way to catch up, air quotes, they're going to have solved those problems.
No, indeed. I mean, and you will have more of a historic insight into this from the point of view of your own history, DJI, etc. But I honestly feel like DJI approached things from the point of view of a trust-based system. So they came in and they said, okay, we're going to hire people like Brendan, we're going to have a big US trusted workforce, etc., and we're going to work with the US government, with the US regulators to build our business into the US. When that door shut, we shouldn't be surprised when people like Brendan do then leave, etc., and they do reduce their American facing workforce, etc. And this is now, we just have to get used to what is the new animal, basically, in my opinion.
Right. Sean, just give me a second. My sister just dropped 56 beautiful people up in here. And, this is the whole goal of what we're doing. Not only to educate people within the drone industry, but also to have conversations in front of people that aren't necessarily talking drones every day. That you can get an idea of what we're dealing with, trying to bring this technology, which earlier was mentioned, is almost like a computer. In the early days, my sister and I had the same household, and we had a computer it was black and orange, and we'd play this golf game on it. I don't know if that computer could do anything else, but we'd play this golf game. No one would think that computers would have gotten to where we're at now with all the capabilities that we have, and we believe that the drone industry is largely the same. So it's so awesome to have so many people that are not necessarily going to be educated on what we're talking about to be in here and hearing, the thought process behind our industry. Sean, we've run up on time, but if you want to chat for another 5 minutes and just kind of, and then we'll just have a shorter in between. So I have Sean Hickey here. He's in the UK. It's like, what, 3 a.m. there? Something like that?
Something like that.
2 or 3 in the morning?
With the US streams, I tend to try and forget the time.
Yeah, sure. But my man has stayed up late to talk about drone technology with me. And we're just talking about how, if you've heard about drones, you've probably heard about a company called DJI. They're a Chinese manufacturer that started with DIY type stuff, went into the consumer space where it would have been people just taking photos for fun, maybe doing weddings or real estate photography. And it's literally transformed it's created an entire industry in which I've been a part of for 8 years and used to work for DJI. So we rely so much on one manufacturer to do so much for drone technology, whether it's push the envelope for innovation or provide a bed for testing or creating software and everything else that piggybacks on top of DJI. And yesterday they released a groundbreaking product in which we were just discussing what that does for everyone else. There's been a significant effort or push to try to find ways to add another player or other players that can challenge DJI, and now it just seems like that is less and less likely. And Melissa, thank you. My sister just gifted 5 subs to the community. I appreciate you as always. And hopefully some of your guys got that and you guys visit. Every Tuesday we're doing this. Sean, talk about your show, Geeksvana, when it goes on, how people can join, where people can find you, etc.
Yeah, you can just basically search for Geeksvana anywhere. We have the same tag on all social media. Our main platform is YouTube. We do everything from drone rule videos for both the US and UK marketplaces, all the way through to industry news, consumer news, and also, of course, the longer podcasts. But it's all focused 100% down onto the drone side of things. So if you like drones, you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, so that's it's Friday night your time. So Friday at you start at 9?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a guess. Okay, so Friday 9 p.m. 9 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, or in the States, I think that it starts at 4 p.m. Eastern. That would be 1 p.m. Pacific. So if you are looking for another source of content, if you want to interact with Sean, he has built a cool community there that's very active and very responsive. I also have put Sean's LinkedIn in the chat. If you click that, go follow him. He has good insights and is a great person to get in touch with. And especially if you need an alley-oop in the UK, it's always good to have somebody that got your back and knows what's going on. So Sean, I appreciate you taking your time, coming and hanging out with our community. Go get some sleep or get some more work done, whatever you choose.
Indeed, yeah.
But let's do this again.
Sleep is definitely the order. I've come to you from the home office, so it isn't the usual studio tonight. So I thought I would. I'm much closer to the ability to go straight to sleep, which is awesome.
Yeah, I sleep anywhere, so that's
oh, cool.
For sure. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you, and let's talk again soon.
Good to see you. Yeah, cheers, Randall.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Guys, that was my guy, Sean Hickey. He runs the Geeks Vana podcast, and I was privileged to be a part of it like a week and a half ago. I do think that it's a good place to go. John, I appreciate you being in here, brother. I know that it's getting late. And just to kind of give a heads up before we bring in our last guest, who is Jeff Clementi, who has been in here, I think, every week, or at least from the beginning, and I appreciate him doing so. But before he comes on, I do want to say that we are going to try to adjust the Unmanned Underground, this show's time. So next week, next Tuesday, we are going to try to do a day show. Maybe let's call it 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Pacific. I believe that, it's easier for people that are while they're working or that they already intend to work to get more work done while they're tuning in. So next week, it will not be a night event. It will be a day event. Just keep that in mind. My sister dropping 5 more subs. I really, really appreciate you. Let's talk a little bit about my sister, because we are going to talk about drones a little more. But for those people that are in here for Unmanned Underground in particular, Twitch is a really cool platform for many, many different things. And if you're new to it, you should explore it. Even if you're not a video game person, I personally grew up playing video games and love video games. If you're not a video game person, there's a ton of other stuff that's going on Twitch. There are people that are doing live DJ sets or playing music. There are people that are doing tutorials on painting, on macrame, whatever you're into, you could probably find someone doing it on Twitch. And the story of my sister is that about a year and a half ago, she had recently gone through a divorce, and I was like, you really should try to play video games on Twitch. She was, without a better word to use, dog shit at every video game she's ever played. And so instead of we were playing video games during the pandemic online, and I was like, you should just stream this. And she has turned that into an entire community of people that love her and her personality, and gives people that outlet, that thing to do. So in watching her create a community on Twitch, I felt like it only made sense to do the same thing with the drone community, where people can be a little bit except Peggle. My sister said except Peggle. If you have not played Peggle, it is the most goated game of all time, and my sister is actually probably the best Peggle player I've ever seen in my life. Okay, but anyway, so watching what my sister did, it just kind of encouraged me that the drone industry really needs a place where you can communicate casually, that you can have maybe a focus of the conversation, but people can chime in and say what they really feel. And I think over time it will catch on in a different way than it has even thus far, because we're overloaded with content in the drone industry, but it's all content driven by manufacturers with an agenda. And I think instead, having conversations with people that are in it every day only inspires you to take the same route that they've taken, or learn from their mistakes and refine what you're doing. So in Unmanned Underground, that has been the goal from the beginning. And we are on our 5th episode on the Twitch platform, and you guys being here means the world. Melissa, you dropping a few double or triple the people in here to listen to the conversation with Jeff Clementi, my boy. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to hop over to bring Jeff in, and we're going to have one more chat. So stick around for another half hour with us, guys. I appreciate you being here. And now introducing my guy, Jeff Clementi. How's it going, Jeff?
Good, man. How are you?
Well, to be honest, I haven't complained about it or said anything, but I got sick a couple days ago, and I think that's what comes with having an 18-month-old in daycare. She got like pink eye over the weekend, which sucked, and then my wife got a sore throat, and then my wife gave me said sore throat. So how I'm doing? Fantastic, but I'm also, dealing with a voice that's failing me over time. So it looks like you'll be having to do a lot more talking than I am.
No problem. How many kids do you have?
One, just the one. What
I'm
about
up
you?
to 4, so
Four.
I'm up to 4.
Can you tell me in a sane man's calculation how you get up to 4? Just wondering.
I'm pretty sure you know how you get up to 4. Same
I
way
know
you get
how
up to
you-
1 just times 4.
I know I know how you do it, but having one, I've told my wife, like, I would say I never thought I'd want one. And then I had one, and I'm like, I get to put all my eggs in this basket and not get, like, sidetracked? Fantastic. I see my buddy Grizz in chat. He has 2. He has, like, a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old. And I'm like, that's so hard. So you have 4. Give me the age range.
Oh, hell, putting me on the spot already. So my oldest actually turns 10 tomorrow. As my wife's birthday is also tomorrow.
Wow.
So we got 10, 7, 6, and 4.
My man.
Yeah.
So during those
Never
years,
dull moment.
I'm gonna take this opportunity to get some like advice and also some like mentorship. During those years when you had, especially the 3 that are really close together, were you like on the work grind in the same way like then as you expect to be now? I mean, COVID made my life easy because I was home, but like the work grind and mixing like kids seems really difficult. Tell me about that, like work-life balance a little bit.
So I've been in the fire service for going on 16 years now. The first, I don't know, 6 or 7 was volunteer, then ended up getting paid. Been flying robots for longer than I can remember. And then all of a sudden my 2 passions collided and started pushing drones for the fire service, didn't make any headway. And that was about, that was about when we had our 3rd. And then I was offered a job flying for DOD doing contract work and realized it was a whole lot easier to support 4 kids on a contract job salary than it was on a fire department salary. So I actually left my full-time job at the city and started doing drone stuff, which, I work, I make decent money doing contract work. Now, obviously, I work for Skybrowse, but that's fairly recent.
Yeah. You said obviously, and it could be obviously because of the hat, but we do need to dive into the Skybrowse thing, and we
will
should
for
do.
sure.
So continue.
So, doing contract work gave me a whole lot of time to do a lot more volunteering. I still volunteer for Rutherford County. I was part-time with them, helping them get their drone program started. We started that in 2017. That is county fire department. And now I'm the operations manager for Stormpoint, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, which we respond to hurricanes, tornadoes, all that kind of stuff. And we also have operations agreements with local sheriff's department, police department. We run emergency traffic to everything local here as well, which is why on the political side, the thing in Florida is killing us. We've been at every hurricane since 2017, since Harvey. And we primarily fly DJI. We're a nonprofit. We can't afford most of the American-made stuff. But anyways, I digress. So yeah, contract work, now Skybrowse, and I'm basically a nerd that has a passion for helping people, and I get to do a whole lot of that throughout the UAS stuff.
From your experience, what percentage of firefighters are nerds?
It's actually increasing a lot.
Okay.
It used to be, a lot of hose dragging, head banging, door kicking, all that kind of stuff. And a lot has moved into the technology side. Drones aside, drones are an awesome addition to the fire service. But everything from, thermal, with FLIR, thermal imaging has progressed. Everything seems to be going technology to the point where now air packs on our backs are, telling people outside how much air you have in your cylinders. So as the technology progresses, the nerds in the fire service have also progressed. And I've kind of got a passion of turning those macho. A good friend of mine with County Dallas is he's on the SWAT team. Everything is gotta do guns. It's macho, and we turned him to nerd real quick. Got flying some drones back in 2017, and he's now half nerd, half macho. So it's definitely been an awesome evolution.
I would say over the past 7 years, I'll say 8 years, but really 7 years, I've been around a lot of people in the fire service and in police work, and the people that are already on board with the drone stuff seem very receptive. But the thing is that I've never seen them the first time that they're seeing the technology. I've done big presentations in LA, for instance. There was 150 people from different departments within Southern California. I think there were some northern as well, but they were the drone guys. But the thing that I find super interesting is when you have a traditional firefighter, one that's just about climbing a ladder and saving a life and running through fire and kicking doors down and shit. Like, when you give them this technology, is their first inclination the worst case scenario, which is let's fly this thing as fast as we can and see what it can do, or carry a box of donuts over the fence or something? Or is it not that, and is it a little more reserved and with respect to what the technology can do? Because that's my biggest worry, is whenever you have a non-drone person, the first thing they want to do is like push it to its limits.
So you bring up a really, really good point. There's a lot of stubbornness in the fire service. There is a lot of everything goes down to tradition. Even the helmets we wear. Could we wear smaller, safer helmets? Absolutely. But they don't look like the traditional helmets. So we stick with the big brimmed, fire helmets that everyone knows. It's all tradition. I've been pushing drones for Murfreesboro City Fire, which is where I was actually paid. I've been pushing it since 2015. Never made any headway. In the county, I made a ton of headway within one call. I called the county fire chief. We had chlorine burning on the interstate. I said, hey, this was back in 2017. The video is still on YouTube. I said, hey, I've got the drone in the car. Would you like an aerial perspective of what you got? He said, yeah, how fast can you get here? It was the next day Rutherford County started their drone program. And then tying it to current stuff, talking about people seeing the tech for the first time. I was sitting down with the fire chief in the county today, playing some videos of the new release from DJI, and immediately he said, pull the trigger, get me 3 bids, we'll go with the lowest bid. So we're purchasing an M30. It's Rutherford County will have one, as soon as we can get our hands on one.
Yeah.
So seeing the technology, actually getting it in front of the people that make decisions, is a game changer. We realized a long time ago, live streaming incidents. Now we don't just stream to the people that are at the incident with us. We'll live stream to county commissioners. We'll live stream to the mayor. We'll live stream to those people that have that final say, and that are making the decisions on policy. You look at Florida, a lot of the decisions that are being made, they don't have a clue what they're making them on. They're making them based on, I hate China,
Right.
Plus, funding coming from other U.S. manufacturers. But that being said, they're pushing an agenda that they really don't have a clue about. I can personally say I found 3 people with an aircraft. 2 of them would not have survived. There's no doubt whatsoever. One of them was diabetic, and the other one was a 17-year-old kid with autism. Without the aircraft in the air, it would have been a different story. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of agencies in Florida that aren't going to have the tools that they need to do the job. Right. There is not another aircraft right now that a lot of agencies can afford that do the same things as a 210 or a 300. There's just not.
So with that, just because there are some people in here that aren't in the drone industry, I just want to explain. Like in Florida, there is a state law, a bill that was passed to to basically create a list of drone manufacturers that would be acceptable, and the ones left off of them were Chinese manufacturers, namely DJI, the largest manufacturer that's out there. The issue is that when you have millions of dollars of taxpayers' money that have went to buy DJI airframes, and now you're being told that you have to ground them and dispose of them at some point, it really stunts our ability to convince people to step up to the plate again, because they're worried either they're getting insufficient technology, they're paying too much for the technology, or something's gonna happen and it's gonna get shut down again. So we, as people within, the believers of drone technology and what it can do, and like Jeff just said, he saved three lives, two of which you found 3 people, 2 of which would not have survived. Like, that story should be enough.
Those are the only ones that you have eyes on a person that you didn't have eyes on before.
Exactly.
There's there's the same, we fly structure fires, we see all the hot spots with thermal. How many of those houses would have started up again? There's all the ones that you can't prove you saved a life. And I'm one of a million pilots out there that fly for public safety, for police, for fire.
Exactly.
The stories are endless.
And so what happens is you either have politicians specifically, and in Florida I would say that's largely the case, that are a part of this vendetta about shutting down Chinese anything. Regardless of if there's conclusive evidence of a reason to, there is a vendetta there. But there's also an ill-informed public that is not pushing for or pushing against the improper regulation of drone technology. We're constantly fighting against those regulations, but if you're able to tell the stories that Romeo Dersher has been telling for the last 5 years about lives being saved, which I can't quote the numbers off of my head, but I think back in like 2018 when he first put it out, it was like 360 lives saved using off-the-shelf drone technology. And I don't know if that's worldwide or in the US alone, but still, if you have a piece of technology that can save lives and save property, why not use it? We're fine with a law enforcement agency spending $1 million on an aircraft, but not necessarily okay with them spending $5,000 on an unmanned aircraft. And it's kind of crazy the things we fight against. And clearly, you have your feelings as similar to mine that DJI is not necessarily the enemy here. They are providing a solution in which no one else can really touch.
The thing that's killing us is we're killing the industry. We're killing the industry from the inside. It's not politicians that just got this grand idea that drones are bad. It's companies, I'm not going to bash any specific company, but 3 more lobbyists were literally just hired in Texas to push an agenda against DJI specifically.
Yeah.
And it's a political war. It's manufacturers that are fighting the UAS industry. What they're not realizing is the damage they're doing, 1, with the people that are actually using the stuff.
Right.
But 2, it's creating this false insecurity about UAS in general. If they need to make laws about it, drones must be dangerous, and it's not the case at all.
Right.
So we're literally killing the industry from the inside.
And you're feeling it from both ends, not only the public safety side, but we said we talked about the Skybrowse thing, and the thing that I mentioned earlier is there's so many companies or individuals that have jobs at companies that rely on being able to fly the aircrafts that they have. Skybrowse is a software developer that is developed on DJI and Autel drones, both Chinese companies. And if you shut them down, Skybrowse then has to go to another manufacturer that has less drones out in the world, and the drones cost more, so they're less likely to be able to afford the software that then goes on top of it that enables them to do other things. And so people lose jobs. And people losing those jobs maybe leave the drone industry, and now we lost all the talent, all the expertise that we have created to go work at Google or go work at Amazon or go work elsewhere. So it becomes a really complicated problem when you start putting undue pressure on the industry. And the industry is DJI. Should there be room for others? Hell yes. Did I believe Autel was a good solution? Yes, that's why I joined Autel. And I still think that there is so much benefit to having that differentiation or that diversification within the market. But it still should be up to choice. And that choice should be product specs, reliability, relationships you have, whatever it is. It should not be a lawmaker telling you what you can and can't buy.
Agreed, 100%.
So we had Bobby Oyang, who was the CEO of Skybrowse, on a few weeks ago, and Jeff was not a part of Skybrowse at the time. So it's not like we're like, let's give Skybrowse all the time in the world. But tell me a little bit about how you joined the team, like what you're planning on doing, how that kind of all evolved.
I'm actually shocked that I took on another full-time job. Contract work was doing really well for me, to be quite honest. That being said, my goal since we were duct taping cameras to the bottom of fixed wings, my goal has been to use the tool to do a job. I figured out real quick that police and fire could do amazing things and literally save lives with the technology. So that's been my whole goal from the beginning. Get people to use the tech. It will change how things work. I go all over the place, talk to fire departments, go to every conference I can dig up. I've been using Skybrowse for going on 2 years now, and Bobby came to me and said, hey, how do you feel about working for Skybrowse? My whole motivation working for Skybrowse is to give people a reason to fly. A lot of people don't realize that you can do incident reconstruction with drones. A lot of people have drone programs that they're already using this stuff for search and rescue, for anything like that. The big thing with something like Skybrowse or Pix4D or any of the tools that are out there is ROI. It's one of the things that you can prove to a police department their return on investment. You can prove this saves time in traffic, this saves time here, that essentially frees up more of a budget for UAS stuff, for police departments, for fire departments, for anyone using the technology. Mm-hmm. So do I want to sell Skybrowse to everybody? Sure, absolutely. But my motivation is more or less to give police departments that aren't flying right now, to give them some ammo to actually go and say, hey, look, these will pay themselves off. And maybe in the grand scheme of things, they can use them for ISR when serving warrants, or for search and rescue, for whatever it may be. This is the step through the door for a lot of agencies, because they can prove, hey, by the way, we're doing this now. It takes us 2 hours to do it. We can do it in 6 minutes. A lot of it's a no-brainer to me and you and the people that are using the tech. But until the upper echelon see the actual numbers in front of them, they're not willing to pull the trigger on a UAS program, or even one drone for that matter.
Right.
So through Skybrowse, I have seen agencies that are like, we don't have a drone program, but after seeing that, we're going to. Mm-hmm. It's an awesome thing. It really is.
Yeah.
So now I get to go to these conferences, and rather than paying to go to them, I get Skybrowse to send
exactly.
them. So.
So because you have a 10-year-old, I don't know how old you are, but I'm assuming that you've heard of the brand Fubu, right?
I turned 40 last week.
Congratulations on making it 40 years, especially running through fires and shit. That's a big deal. But the idea of Fubu stands for us, by us, and I'm a big fan of Russell Simmons, who started Fat Farm, and he's been in the hip hop world forever. And this is all going to make sense when I get there. But you being a firefighter working for Skybrowse, Chief Wayne Baker working for DJI, Vern Sally working for Axon, Skydio has their fire guy. Is it a cliche to bring people from the public safety world into drone manufacturing to be like, hey, go talk to your fire buddies and tell them how good our stuff is? And does that really work, that they don't see through like the fog that it's like, now you have a day job, and you're representing this? And or is that really how it has to be done? Hopefully you understand my question. Like, does it feel disingenuous for you now having, a brand on your hat, going and telling guys that you should use it, versus wearing the badge on your chest?
So, like the badge on the hat, this is the newest hat I've got, and it's the only one that's not, completely destroyed. So that's why I've got this hat on. No, but aside from that, disingenuous, I'd say no, because these are conversations that I've been having. It's no different now than it was a year ago. I told Bobby a year ago we would show up with Storm Point, with the 501c3, with the nonprofit, and just talk to people. Will I talk about Skybrows? Yeah, I would absolutely talk about Skybrows. Why? Because we use the hell out of it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as it gets. It's so to talk to people about the product, that's what I was always doing. So as far as genuine, anybody that knows me and anybody that gets to know me, I wear everything on my sleeve.
Yeah.
I don't hold anything back. I don't pull punches. If I see a problem with Skybrows, I go straight to the source. I'm like, Bobby, look, we need to get these in a row. I don't think it's just I can't say it's not disingenuine across the board, because I'm sure there are several companies that do hire or do put people in that position specifically for title.
Yeah.
I hope that's not why Bobby hired me.
No, I don't think so either.
He knows that I'm passionate about what I do. But I definitely see it's like anything else. You know, there's definitely other games being played within the drone industry, and
yeah,
there definitely may be some of that going on. That being said, like Wayne Baker, he's another one. He is as genuine as they get.
100%.
I've never met a more honest person in my life, and he is doing basically the same thing he was doing before he worked at DJI. He's going around and pushing the technology, and he'll be the first person to tell you if something sucks or if something's amazing. He doesn't care who made it.
Right.
He'll be the first person to tell you, yeah, that's probably the best tool for the job for what you're doing.
Right. I was at FDIC with Wayne Baker and Garrett Brill while I worked at DJI back in 2016, I believe, and we actually put tinfoil. No, it was a granola bar wrapper over the Phantom that we had so that we could fly it because we were right next to Lucas Oil. So like go way back with those guys, and they were talking about DJI stuff in the same way that Wayne's talking about DJI stuff now. I saw Garrett Brill being like, DJI got it 100% right with this product. Yeah, because DJI is listening to reliable people. They have enough units out there being flown by public safety that they could get that feedback. And I think that it makes sense for DJI to have that representation. And it makes sense for anyone in the drone game. It makes sense if you're going after public safety to have the input of public safety. I think the part that I was asking, and it was truly because I don't know, not because it's what I'm seeing, is that when you come back to your brothers and sisters in the fire service, if it's like I took a job with Gatorade and you want one, it's kind of like, does that feel weird? Because you're not traditionally trained as salespeople. You're trained to be honest, but now, like, I know business, and you aren't very good at business at your job if you're not selling it, right? If you're not saying the good stuff. And so if that just feels awkward was really the question. Not that it's like not understandable why it would happen, but just you being a guy that's, just made that leap, if it feels weird in any way.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, a little bit. They're like today. It wasn't that I was trying to sell Skybrows at all. And I feel like when I'm around guys that I know, I do have to preempt myself. Like, look, this is not a sales pitch, but you have to see what I 3D modeled the other day.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Do I think it's uncomfortable? No. But I do find myself saying, hey, just so you know, I'm really not trying to sell you shit right now.
Exactly.
At all. Like,
yeah.
That's not what this is about. I just flew some cool stuff, and you really got to see this model.
For sure.
So there's a lot of that. But, no, I mean, I don't really sell stuff. I talk to people.
Yeah. I feel the same. I mean, if you build relationships, you already have these relationships, and people know that you've seen the shit they're seeing, and you're not going to give them the wrong tool or waste their time or waste their money on something that's not going to actually help. Plus, the nice thing about Skybrows is it's very visual. The proof is literally in an image of what you can achieve. And I think No Hands Nick asked why you would use Skybrows instead of Drone Deployer Pix 4D. I'll let you do that because you work for the company, but they are quite different.
So I can say this because I've been in the fire service long enough, but it's firefighter proof. So when I say it's firefighter proof, it's keep it simple, stupid. It's the KISS method. It's literally you push a button, the drone flies itself, you take that video, put it into the computer, and it makes a 3D model. You don't need the camera overlap. You don't need to know anything about anything to make a good, accurate 3D model that's accurate down to a centimeter.
And fast.
And insanely fast.
Yeah.
So it takes 2 minutes to fly up to an acre. Like, flying it's fast. It takes a couple minutes to stick it in the SD card, and then within 20 minutes, you have a processed 3D model in front of you. I'll be 100% honest. Pix 4D makes some amazing shit. I have seen some 3D models that Pix 4D put out that you could frame and hang on a wall, and mind-blowing stuff. You talk to the guys that processed them, it took them, 12 to 14 hours to process this stuff. And that was after whatever else they had to do to get it ready to process.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, to capture it. More recently, we were at the tornadoes in Kentucky. 100 miles of tornado. I mapped out in one set of Matrice 210 batteries, 98 acres in one flight. It took me 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe, landed, stuck it in. 30 minutes later, I had a whole neighborhood 3D modeled and was able to I didn't even have to hand it, I emailed it. But I was able to email a link to the people that needed the data. And it was all in under an hour. That's absolutely insane. For something to make a model that fast, or a map, or whatever you want to call it, in under an hour, mind-blowing. So yeah, the speed and the simplicity is what it boils down to.
Yeah, and
I can't talk bad about Pix 4D. I mean, they really do make some really crazy 3D models. But it's by far a little, you almost need a degree to learn how to use it to get those 3D models.
And because I had Bobby on a few weeks ago, who's the CEO of Skybrowse, we kind of had a conversation in depth about what makes Skybrowse special. But it's also like, does Skybrowse get the shine that it deserves? And we can have this conversation about manufacturers and software developers and individuals. But Skybrowse can make a map so damn fast. And it should be something that every drone manufacturer has heard of. But then you run into drone programs within public safety. I was thinking about drone manufacturers because then you have drone manufacturers, let's say Skydio goes and sells a shit ton of stuff through Axon to a department. They are not interested in Skybrowse because there's no compatibility. So now there's this tool, there's this capability that was not part of the equation of the purchase of what airframe they purchased, right? And I feel like education is so difficult in the drone space, and it is largely reliant on the value-added resellers. Chris Finks in here from UVT, he mentioned, the mentioned value-added resellers, but they are the ones that can take in a customer and offer them the whole solution, keeping everything in mind because they eat, breathe, and sleep it. A manufacturer, including myself, has to go down the line of what is going to benefit me at the end of the day, because that's what my job is to an extent, right? Like, I'm not trying to say that I'm like a sleazy dude, but if I'm at DJI is the best shit. If I'm at Autel is the best shit. That's just how it goes. So my question is, what kind of things can you do differently than Skybrowse has done in the past to get that shine to where the entire decision-making process can be impacted by the end result or this deliverable that you can create at Skybrowse?
So the big thing being networking. The more you network, the farther you get the product outreach and all that kind of stuff. I think that's one of the biggest reasons that I was brought to the team is because networking is, it'll either sink a company or it'll make it go to places that, you never thought. And I'm passionate about talking to people. So as far as that end, I think that'll help push it forward. But the tech itself is so freaking impressive and it's changing every day. We are pushing to be drone agnostic. Right now we are DJI and Autel. Why? Because they make up 90% of the market. This last public safety conference in Florida, we had more people ask about Parrot than anything else there. Why? Because they're not allowed to fly DJI. And if you ask about some of the other drones that were there, they were like, well, they're the ones politicking that got us in this position in the first place. Like, we're going with Parrot. So yeah, we're definitely trying to be more agnostic. And I think once we do open more doors, compatibility with Parrot, with, whatever company might want to fly Skybrowse on, once we open all of those doors to unlock all these different aircrafts that are out there, I mean, it's going to skyrocket. There's no way it won't.
Yeah.
Because it's simple.
Does Skybrowse work through value-added resellers? Like, do you have partners that sell drone technology and also sell the software, or is the software like an add-on thing after the fact?
No, I know we do have several partners. I can't think off the top of my head
Yeah, you
who
don't
they
need
are.
to, but that's something
But
that
yeah,
is part of the go-to-market strategy.
yeah, absolutely. We definitely have several partners that push product with aircraft. If you need a solution where drone in a box, if you show up and say, hey, I need a drone that does this, this, and this, and Skybrowse is the key to adding one of those features that a department or an agency or even the commercial side of things, if somebody needs what Skybrowse can do, we definitely have partners that sell aircrafts and software packaged together.
Definitely. Um, you showed me this earlier, but behind your head, you have a special little thing. Let's talk
My
about
blue
that for
light.
a second. Tell me why you made it. Make me feel good, and I'm also while I'm pulling up ways that people get in touch with you. Tell me what it is and how you made it.
So I was messing with you, was it last week or the week before?
About the blue
You
light.
and one of your yeah, you
Yeah.
and one of your guests had a blue light in the background. So I was like, man, I need to fit in. I need a blue light too. So that's all 3D printed in it's a clear PETG, clear PETG with some, little red, blue, green LED strips. 3D printed it, and an hour later, I got my own personal unmanned underground blue light. So
Yeah, well, I'm not only impressed. I think it looks good. Hopefully, it's not just there for right now, but you keep it there for the long term. I won't commit you
look,
to it.
I do a lot of shit for CGP. Are you familiar with CGP?
No.
So CGP is cool guy points, and that right there, that's cool guy points.
Well, it's also something interesting that you mentioned about networking because I've known you for a while, but I didn't realize this was your first like in industry job.
Yeah. I mean, I've done a bunch of contract work. Like I said, I do a lot of flying for public safety. I
Right.
fly more for PD than I do for fire. That's just when they're busy, they can't fly, so we do.
Right.
And then on the nonprofit side, the big thing that's worked me into the industry is I've never had those ties. I don't have someone to answer to, so I can speak my mind. I say
Mm-hmm.
what I think, and I had no one to hold me back. Um, I'm not saying Bobby will hold me back in any way, shape, or form because he knows that's not possible. But I've always had that ability to just openly say my thoughts. And whether
Yeah.
you like them, hate them, or whatever, there's some people that agree and some people that don't agree. So I've been able to push myself in the space without ever having that ball and chain or anything for that matter holding me back from not being able to say this or that about anything for that matter.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's how I built my network, so to speak.
And I think that it's a playbook that more people should use. I was talking to Peter. I was asking why he wasn't taking the free opportunities to network, right? Like you can go into a Facebook group and say, "What's up? I'm Peter Fuchs. I represent this company. Check out my stuff." And if you do that, people are going to say, "Oh, what's up, man? Like, great to see you. And I'll see you in Orlando." Like that's how it works. And
Yeah.
I feel like when I was at Autel for that brief time, I thought I like just I laid out this blueprint to how you can go into a drone manufacturer and be the leadership that people want to see. You are out there with the people, and so when they have a problem, you're answering it directly to the people. They know where to find you. You're not hiding behind a desk and having other people do your bidding on your behalf. And I encourage people. Bobby is very public as well and says what he thinks. So I
Yeah.
think that you guys get along really well. And I think I understand you and where you're coming from, even though you managed to do all of this shit without having a brand to create you like your persona, right? You did it on your own. And so anyone that's listening that isn't necessarily working for a drone manufacturer or software developer and wants to, all you have to do is get a reputation. How do you do that? Interact with people. You could be in this chat and be the person that people keep seeing, like, oh, no hands, Nick keeps saying stuff. Who is this guy? What's he about? I like what he's saying. You go on Facebook groups, and do the same thing. Like, it won't take long before people recognize you as a character within our journey, and people need people thinking that people that think about drones all the time and want to take their technology to the right places. And I feel like Bobby got super lucky with you. Wouldn't have known you were a free agent, but also didn't know that you were kind of always a drone industry free agent, so to speak. So he's lucky to have you. The industry's lucky to have you, and I'm lucky to have you chatting with me on the show. I put your LinkedIn in the chat. Is there any other place that people should follow what you're doing? Obviously,
I'm all over Facebook.
Yeah.
Hit up stormpoint.org. That's the nonprofit that I work with. Yeah, I mean, I'm all over the place.
Okay.
But biggest places I think are probably Facebook and LinkedIn.
Perfect. And No Hands Nick is still in here, and he's saying he does want a drone industry job. So honestly, in kind of closing on my part, if being in here and having these chats inspires people to do something differently or add someone to your network that you didn't have before, like those two things alone can literally change people's lives. My life in the drone industry was changed when I met two random ass ex-poker players in Vegas that said they wanted to start a drone company. I've been in this shit for 8 years. I've made my livelihood off of it, and I will continue to make my livelihood off of it until they either shut down the technology or put me in a grave. So it can be one conversation that changes everything. And Jeff, you have written the playbook in my mind now, realizing kind of your path that you can honestly be a firefighter and be like, but this stuff is so important that I need to advocate for it without having a benefit. And eventually the industry is going to respect you and find you and put you in a place where you can, be a part of crafting where this goes. Where not the end user doesn't always get to do that.
Right.
So
well, I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, man.
Good chat.
Much respect for sure. Half hour goes by super quickly. But let's chat again soon. I'm sure we'll be talking like every day from here until forever. But yeah,
absolutely.
I appreciate you coming on, sharing your insights, and keep doing what you're doing. If you need any assistance in your Skybrowse journey, I'm a phone call away.
Appreciate it, Randall.
All right, brother. Take care of yourself.
You too. Take care.
Guys, that was my guy, Jeff Clementi, now of Skybrowse, formerly of doing all sorts of good things, saving lives and livelihoods and jumping through fires and stuff. I really, really appreciate everyone for sticking around. Like I said, next week we're going to do a day show, and maybe that will be the case going forward. These night shows I know that you guys have families and stuff to do. If you like the night show, tell me. Say, we love being here at night, and maybe we'll do both or we'll find a way, but I want to impact as many people as possible and not make people feel like they're having to sacrifice anything to join. But honestly, you guys showing the support, being in here, I do believe that this is the beginning of something that's going to be much longer term, that really will guide conversations about the drone industry, and you guys being in here means a lot. But yeah, I don't have much more to say other than go to unmannedunderground.com. I'm gonna send out a bunch of merch. I forgot to do that today, so I'll get in touch with people that I want to send stuff to. But if you go to Unmanned Underground, also if you go on the job board, I spent some time posting a bunch of new jobs that are active as of right now. Manufacturers, software developers, people in the drone industry looking for people that are passionate about what they do. So whether you're a marketer, a salesperson, or just really interested in the technology, go to our job board, click on the links, go and apply for a job, because why the hell not? Level up, and if you need a reference, feel free to use me. Guys, I'm tired, I'm sick, I'm out. So for everyone that's in here, thank you. Hopefully I see you next week, and take care of yourselves. See you later.